Hey there. Today I am going to be evaluating racialized words. This is going to be kind of choppy and this video is going to be a little choppy, but because I still haven't mastered a way of putting together slides and a presentation on live. But this presentation I did a while ago. I just decided that it would be a good time to match up an essay I wrote in 2017 with the presentation that I did just last year. Okay. Hi there. Dr. Cindy, I'm going to have to kind of prop this thing up, so you have to bear with me. I am just so not professional with this. I have no staff or anything like that. And I wouldn't. I'm retired, okay? But I am a teacher, an educator, and I thought that I would start getting into some of these racialized words that we use every day, every single day without even blinking, because we don't even realize it. And I'm hoping that at the end of this discussion, see if I can get this to stay. Yeah. Now, I'm hoping that at the end of this discussion, you're going to stop using the word minority to identify yourself as a black person, okay? Just stop it. And I want white people who are watching this, my friends, and any other white people who I may not know but just think that they're progressive, stop using the word minority, okay? And I'm going to show you why. You know that in the American English language, there are at least two ways to define a word, right? Two different meanings, at least two. I mean, you go to dictionary.com, Merriam-Webster, you're going to see 3, 4, 5, 6 different definitions of a particular word. And words are so important. Words have value, and words are valuable. Because if we didn't use words to express our thoughts and ideas, everything would just look like a bunch of random acts of, it would get a little mixed up. Well, I don't want to digress. Let's start off with an essay I wrote back in 2017. Hi, everybody who's checking in. Thank you. It makes me feel good when people are actually paying attention to something other than this. Stop. I'm not going to, okay? But yeah, listen to what I'm saying and pay attention. Put on your critical thinking caps and pay attention, because I'm going to make you think about things that you would not ordinarily think about. And you'll say, oh, yeah, I never thought about that. Right. Well, then I've done my job. Okay? All right. The essay was entitled Racism, Death by the Numbers. Okay, let's get started. We have all heard it, and there are many of us who have said it. I know that there are a great deal of people who have thought it, and any person who may be contemplating such a scenario of numbers and race are either waiting for the number of old white bigots to die off. Now, I know we've all thought about that kind of stuff. Oh, when the old people, those old white bigots die, then racism will just die with it. Okay. Okay. I don't want to digress. So that when the old white bigots die off, or that supposedly in about 2020, now look, 2020 is not far away. 2020 is next year. How about that? Racism will be eviscerated by virtue of the sheer number of non-white people. Because remember, back in the 20th century, that's all you ever heard about was how by the year 2020, whites will not be in the majority anymore. Remember that? Okay. Let's get back to this thing. Supposedly in about 2020, racism will be eviscerated by virtue of the sheer number of non-white people of color people versus the number of white people in this country. Blacks and some white allies alike have reveled in the notion of non-whites taking over. Quote, taking over. In terms of numbers, and that white people will be in the minority. In effect, racism will face certain death by the numbers. I even read an allusion to it in one of the comments to a statement I posted on Facebook at that time. It struck me more than usual, I guess. It might have been the inspiration for this essay. Listen, before I continue, I'd like you to share this as it is happening live. Share it with your friends. Share it with anybody that you think could use or benefit from it. I'm also going to be posting this on my YouTube channel and on my Cynthia Lee Smith like page as well. And I want you to share it. I want people to understand what things that are going on. Not just all of the little dog and pony posts that I do, okay? Anyway, I guess it was the reference to racism as a number. As in the number of white people living today in America and the certainty of being outnumbered. It was in that statement as written that in the process of becoming outnumbered in the physical individual bodies of white-skinned people, somehow racism would end along with it. Pay attention, people. That is why I decided to write about it in more depth, because it is a statement based on the unadulterated fear of white supremacists and probably regular, ordinary people who identify as white about their place in this country and quite possibly the world itself. Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, 1935 to 2016, a noted psychiatrist, activist, and anti-racism expert, wrote and spoke extensively about the fear of white people and their own genetic annihilation as the origins of and the impetus for white supremacy on this earth. Her work on her doctoral dissertation, which became the ISIS Papers, as well as her essay, The Cress Theory of Color Confrontation and Racism, deserved much more credit than she received in the academy or the mainstream on the subject of white supremacy and racism. Nevertheless, white genetic annihilation is a subject of racism in numbers that is outside of what I'm discussing in this discourse, although in the largest sense possible, a strong case for the rationale behind some of the most inhuman acts by whites ever perpetrated on mankind definitely exists. I thought about the notion of the physical number of whites and non-whites in America, with the emphasis squarely set on what white people have inflated in their own mental viewfinders in terms of us and them. People of color, non-whites, immigrants, and other newly coined characterizations and categories designed to expand their perceived existential threat in the USA have increased the numbers exponentially with regard to that threat. Then I thought about the other USA, or the Union of South Africa, in terms of their numbers. There was a racist system in place for many years in the 20th century called apartheid. Today, anyone knowing the history of this USA, United South Africa, or Union of South Africa, never questions that apartheid existed as a system of denial and segregation. However, what is not widely discussed is the fact that the whites were the minority. Therefore, in that system, minority ruled. Think about that for a minute. Because as we move on into the deeper discussion of minority and majority and the value inherent in those words, I want you to understand what's going on here, okay? So they were considered the minority, and the minority ruled. It didn't matter whether they were surrounded by black people, people of color. As quiet as it is kept, much of their apartheid system remains. Make no mistake, it's still in place. The infrastructure and institutions are still intact, and the power that controls that system is still the power today, no matter how many black presidents they elect. Sound familiar? It is just not called apartheid. In South Africa, the minority still rules, even though they are living in a post-apartheid, colorblind society. Even though blacks have been integrated and assimilated into the system. What they did was simply adopt the American model of individualized personal behavioral racism, and the kind created during the Nixon era in our own USA. Do you understand what I'm saying? They took our script and applied it to their country, much like the Nazis did with eugenicism that was here in America in the early 30s and the 20s and whatnot. People take their cues from this country, okay? They always have, ever since this country started and got real powerful. Indeed, in America, where majority rules, the term means more psychologically than anything else. And we're going to start getting into it. Since majority comes from the root major, we're going to get into it because I have a presentation on that, and I'm going to be digging into those suffixes and things of that nature. Okay? The word majority comes from the root word major, and minority comes from the root word minor. What more appropriate label is there to attach to the people who are considered the least? And I'm not talking numerically. Wait till this presentation kicks in. The minor point in every area of activity other than the term minority. In addition, it is debatable in this political climate today that we even live in a true democracy anymore. You know, the little d democracy where one person has one vote. Of course, that is another story for another time. But it applies here in as much as gerrymandering and voter suppression work to ensure majority rule here in America. Now, I would like for you to think for just a moment on the planet, non-white people outnumber white people, especially in light of the fact that white people in power are including such large swaths. Remember my presentation yesterday, remember my discussion yesterday about the 2010 census and how every person who is non-white has been thrown into this one huge, gigantic chocolate pot of people of color. Okay? All right. Large swaths of additional ethnicities into the POC bucket these days. Yet even with POC having the distinction of being the majority population in the world, and more than likely at this point, the majority of the population in the United States, it does not change the fact that white supremacy flourishes unabated on a worldwide scale. You want to see why it only matters psychologically. It doesn't matter numeric. Now, I'm going to digress. I want to get into the presentation, but I'm going to finish up this essay real quick. Okay, so for those who believe racism's demise is all in the numbers of white Americans who will be in the minority come 2020, that racism in America is all about the physical numbers of white people or the physical number of white bigots in this country, you had better think again. Let me repeat that. If you think that racism's demise is all in the numbers of white Americans who will be in the minority come 2020, that racism in America is all about the physical numbers of white people or the physical number of white bigots in the country, you better think again. Individual behavior can change, but the numbers of individuals with changed behaviors won't erase racism, since white supremacy and racism does not need a majority of people in order to exist. Do you understand? Think South Africa. Sorry. I told you I have a little difficulty keeping this thing up. Anyway, do you understand what I'm saying? It has absolutely nothing to do with numeric value, but it has everything to do with value nonetheless. Now, we're going to talk about minority and majority. I'm going to set up this presentation, so you have to bear with me just a little bit as I do this, okay? Just bear with me a little bit here while I set up this presentation so you can see it. And, okay, I'm going to hopefully get this thing placed in such a way that you can see it. All right, let's see if I can get the next one. Okay, hold on one second. All right. This says, minority and majority, subliminal meanings, when value is measured in more than just numbers. I hope you can see it. First, let's talk a little bit about suffixes. Does everyone know what suffixes are? Okay. Let's talk about the suffix ity. Suffixes change the meaning or grammatical function of a root word. Yeah, we're doing a little English. So let's talk a little bit about the root word minor. Okay? Oxford Dictionary defines minor as lesser in importance, seriousness, or significance. And about the root word major. Oxford Dictionary defines major as important, serious, and significant. So now, wait until we find out what the suffix ity stands for. We know what major is and minor is, and you might have known that on a level. I mean, everyone here is intelligent, but these are things that I need you to think critically about now. Not just say, oh yeah, I know that. I want you to start thinking critically now, people. Let's look at this suffix. The thing that makes major and minor what they are. Dictionary.com defines this suffix as ity, as a suffix used to form abstract nouns expressing state or condition. Okay, now, this is what I need you to understand. You have a suffix here that is attached to the words major and minor, which control states of being. So if you are a minority, that means you are what? In the United States, the value, okay, within the meaning of these words is measured in numbers. Now, I want you to think about the meanings of minority and majority for a moment. Think, think, think. Okay? You thinking? Minority is the state or condition of being lesser in importance, seriousness, or significance. Are you getting this? That is what minority stands for. Majority is the state or condition of being important, serious, or significant. I wonder whether any of you actually really thought about this in this sense, have you really thought about these words? Now, I want you to see that inside of the word minority, it is associated to a loose degree as a numeric value because it has the word lesser in it, in that definition. Okay? Notice, it does have some sort of loose numeric value in the word lesser. In the word minority. But the word majority has no associated numeric value. So how is one associated with the other? Okay? It ain't even loosely associated with a numeric value. Okay, so if you identify as white in America, you consider yourself as part of a measurable numerical majority in this country by virtue of the numbers of white people living in America. Blacks and other non-whites also see each other as measurable by virtue of the numbers of black and non-white people living in America. See, but you need to understand what the word value is, okay? There is no numeric value associated with the state of being major or a majority. Are you paying attention? And there is only a loosely defined numeric value associated with the state of being minor or minority. So what does this mean? I hope I got you thinking. Each word, minority and majority, have an important associated value. The ones that you are not paying attention to because you are dwelling on the numeric value and not the subliminal value of your state of being. Okay? Okay? The value is not measured in terms of numbers. Value. This is an important word. In American culture, the value of more is attached to the word majority, although there is no numeric value associated with it. Recall that the word minority already has a loose numeric value of lesser. Okay? Now think about the words minority and majority in relation to the state of being of value in this country. Think of it in terms of your state of being valuable. Not in terms of the number of you. How valuable are you in terms of your state of being one or the other? And think about these two words that you take for granted and apply to yourselves all the time, especially black people. Why Do you refer to any single non-white person as a minority? Are you major or minor in America? How do you consider yourself? Do you consider yourself minor in America? In terms of your state of being and your value? If you identify as black or non-white, if you identify as black or non-white, do you count as a human being? Pun intended. If you identify as black, given the definition of minority, why would you accept being called a minor anything? Why? In a racialized America, the term minority contains a subliminal meaning, where the value in the meaning is not measured numerically, but in terms of one's state of being. Call it a mind trick. The mind trick using the word minority has been successful at diminishing the value of black American descendants of the enslavement and other non-white people for generations. The value of its subliminal meaning of less than has much more detrimental effect on minds than the number of non-whites in the world. Keep that in mind and think about that. The value of its subliminal meaning of less than has had much more of a detrimental effect on the minds of people than the actual physical number of non-whites in the world. On a conscious level, you may see the words majority and minority in terms of measurement in numbers, but subliminally you have been conditioned and indoctrinated into their true white supremacist definitions and connotations of white as major and black as minor. People. So, do you see how these racialized words could work to perpetuate notions of superiority? And if so, what will you do about it? And I'm going to be putting that on my YouTube channel as well. And I think I may put it in as a video presentation. I might do a voiceover and do it as a video presentation on my Facebook page, on the like page. It's really important for you to understand that these racialized words that we use every day have subliminal meanings that actually do things to your mind and make you think certain ways. I've read so many comments from people who use the word we minorities or minority this or minority that. I would behoove you to, I will challenge you to think about that word before you decide to use it on yourself. Or for white people who are progressive and who are allies or whatever the moniker. That you think about the use of that word and what it really represents. And I have another little thing I want to say to you. I want to ask you, do you really think, even on a non-racial level, do you actually really think that majority rules in this country? And I don't mean on a color level or on a racialized level. Does any person in this country actually believe at this point in this country that majority rules? because it doesn't. And it's not, it's racial in the sense that the people who are in the power are white, and they are white supremacists. But the effect that they have is on everybody because of the economic piece. White people begin to understand that the racial part of it, you can help by denouncing it and by voting out those racists who are in the power, and understanding that you are also minor, okay? But not in a numerical sense, but you are minor as a state of being less than that 1%. Okay, I don't want to digress. I want to keep this on point. Thank you for listening. Share, get on the YouTube page, subscribe, like my Dr. page if you want. But just read and understand. Keep your thinking caps on. And I will begin to discuss other racialized words as time goes on. Talk to you later. Doctor's out. Bye-bye.